Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Even Your Dynasty show. On today's video, I want to talk about a young player that I think would be a super underrated trade target for the Giants and a guy that I would be heavily pursuing if it were up to me. And that would be Spencer Steer, who is, you can kind of list him as a utility guy. He's played first base, third base, corner outfield for the Reds over the last 2 years. Um, he just turned 27, so he's going into his age 27 season, and he has 4 more years of club control. He has one more pre-arbitration year, and then he becomes arbitration eligible next offseason, and then they have his 3 arbitration seasons. So he's not going to be a free agent until 2029. Um, Now, why do I like Spencer Steer as a target? For starters, the athletic profile is something the Giants really need. This is a guy that stole 15 bases 2 years ago and 25 bases last season. He also brings some, kind of much needed power. Uh, he, over the last 2 years, hit 23 home runs in 2023, and he hit 20 home runs last season. He did get a little bit of limited playing time in 2022, hit 2 home runs. Then, um, and if for anybody wondering kind of how that would play in Oracle Park, if you go off Baseball Savant's, adjusted park factors where they factor in things like the weather, wall sizes, and or wall heights and all that different stuff, he would lose a couple. I think they said if all of his games were played in Oracle Park, he'd hit 17 and 18 over the last 2 years. But you know what? Only half the games are played in Oracle Park. He's going to play in other stadiums too. So I don't think it's going to, completely like plummet his power there. Um, if you want to see, what it looks like from with the overlay simply, there are plenty, most of his power is to the pull side. So for a right-handed hitter, that does play better in Oracle Park if your power is primarily pull side. Guys like Buster Posey, it was a little bit of a struggle for Posey, if you do recall, during his career, because a lot of his power was to the other way into right center. He was really adept at driving the ball into right center. So you'd see him play in a place like Milwaukee, and he'd put one over the fence in right center. But in Oracle Park, he hit a lot of doubles and a few triples and some fly outs into triples alley because the ball just doesn't carry great there. So luckily with Steer, a lot of his power is primarily to the pull side. He does have a bit of a flatter swing. So you don't see the big uppercut. He's not a guy that like obsesses with launch angle. You're not going to see if you look at like his barrel rates and things like that. Um, it's not the same as, or it's not super elite or anything like that. It's a little below average. And when I say barrel rate, I do mean exit velocities over a certain amount with a certain launch angle. That's what that refers to. But really good chase rates, uh, above average whiff and strikeout rates. He actually has pretty elite. He has pretty elite walk rates over the last couple of years. I'm pulling up his Baseball Savant page. 83rd percentile walk rate in 2024. If you go back to 2023, it was 72nd percentile. You go look at things like his arm strength's a bit above average. He was pretty bad defensively in 2023. He really graded out poorly in the outfield. He was an infielder kind of transitioning to the outfield last season, still below average in the outfield, but was an improvement in the athletic profile. I could see being better. First base, he actually graded out a little bit above average. He has some really solid athleticism for first base. He could be a temporary fit there next season, as they want to see Bryce Eldridge probably get some more seasoning in AAA. So you could potentially play him at first next year for a while and then, bump him out to left field. I wouldn't put him in right in Oracle Park. I just think that would be probably too much for him. But I could see his athletic profile playing well in left field. This is a guy with sprint speed is like 77th percentile in 2023. Last season, 73rd. Obviously helps him swipe a few bags. His base running value, batting run value, all those things, really good. Looking at the numbers over the last couple of years, um, last year was a down year for him. If you just go off of 2023, he had a really solid year. He hit 271, had 86 RBIs, eight. Let's see, he had an 820 OPS. He was a really solid hitter last season, or in 2023, had 67 uh, extra base hits on the year, or I'm sorry, 63 extra base hits on the year. Last season, the numbers took a step back. Kind of sophomore slump, hit 225 with a 721 OPS. That doesn't jump off the page, but like I did mention, he had 25 stolen bases, he had 20 home runs, and he drove in 92 runs last season. So even in a bad year, he was still a productive player. And I guess where I'm getting at with him is he would actually bring a lot of things the Giants need next season, like what we've seen them lack. He's a guy that performs really well with runners in scoring position, has a career 287 average and an 884 OPS with runners in scoring position. I harped on this with Adamas, and yes, it's a 2-year sample size, but I harped on this with Adamas where, part of my thing with Willie was whatever his numbers are throughout the year, if he is just absolute money with runners in scoring position, he is going to help this team win games. Because at the end of the day, you got to score to win games. And if you get a guy that's just absolutely great at getting that big hit and knocking guys in, some guys are just better in those situations than others. Then you're increasing your opportunities to win games. So yes, I don't want to see a guy hit 220 his entire time here, but I do feel like he's a player that can settle in to being a 250, 260 hitter. It's nothing that's going to jump off the page at you, but I think he can settle in it as a 250, 260 hitter that's going to hit 20 to 25 home runs a year, and he could swipe you anywhere from 20 to 30 bags in a season. I really do believe that with a guy like Steer. And part of what you're doing with Steer is, yes, he's not going to be a, Luis Robert Jr. upside, or even like a Mike Trout if he's somehow healthy upside. He's not that kind of player, but what he does is he does lengthen your lineup. He makes you better and more athletic now. And he could be a really, really solid, I don't like calling him a role player, but like a step above a role player. He can be a really solid everyday player that's going to be pretty inexpensive for, his prime here, going from age 27 to age 30 before he becomes a free agent going into his age 31 season. So I think he's an excellent target for this team. Now, what would be the cost to get him? The Reds are probably looking at young pitching. uh, I I don't think you're gonna make that deal like looking at trading a guy like Harrison or Birdsong. I do think you can probably make those two guys off limits. I think their value is a little bit higher, even though we have seen some ups and downs with them, similar to what we've seen with Spencer Steer. Now the Reds might ask for one of those guys. I think there probably should be some hesitation there, but I could see a package built around Carson Wisenhunt and then maybe one of these young guys that are already in the majors. So, you can possibly look at a Wisenhunt plus a, pick from the Roop, Black, Trevor McDonald, Tristan Beck, Keaton Wynn, kind of that group of players, because I could see, sending two arguably major league ready arms back to Cincinnati, that being an attractive package for them. Now, I mean, I said arguably because some of those guys aren't as established as others, mainly like Mason Black, and obviously Carson Wisenhunt hasn't pitched in a major league game yet, but he's still a highly rated left-handed arm. And those guys have value, and he pitched an entire season in AAA. So he's a guy that very well could potentially make the jump to the majors as soon as next season in Cincinnati, or they get, a good solid arm back with a Beck or a Win. And then, the quote prize of their package is Wisenhunt, who maybe he needs a little bit more time, but they're going to get a little help now and a little help pretty close down the road. So I think that would be probably a fair package. I personally, of the group of guys I listed, I would love to see the Giants not move Landon Roop. I'm really high on Landon Roop for a lot that, as a lot of you guys know, having listened to me, but he's not a player that I would let stand in the way of getting that deal done. Now, the one thing with Steer that I don't like, and it's not, anything against him, the one thing I don't like is that he's not left-handed. I do feel like the Giants need another left-handed bat, especially one with some pop. But looking around at what's out there right now, it's pretty limited. Bellinger just got traded to the Yankees. I'm not sure they can really address the left-handed power side, right now. Uh, maybe Bryce becomes that guy midseason or if he has a huge spring early in the year or down the road, whenever. Maybe Bryce is one of those guys. I would argue they probably need another lefty on top of Bryce. But just looking around, there's not really one out there. Maybe a Josh Naylor, but he's only under contract for one more season, and it's like $14 million. That could potentially impact your pursuit in guys like Corbin Burns if you go and trade for that money, unless you're able to offload some money in other deals, which we've mentioned in the past. With Steer, I mean, he's a pre-arbitration player. He costs you pennies on the dollar. If you trade him for a guy that's probably going to, would have been on your roster anyway, you're basically just swapping the money. It doesn't really impact you in any way. So, making a deal for a Spencer Steer, that's something that you could do, theoretically now, and it doesn't really impact your other pursuits. Now, the one thing I would say is if you trade from your young pitching and then you don't get Burns and you don't get Sasaki, you just kind of thinned out what you currently have. And I'm not saying you can't make it work. They do have a lot of young pitchers, but it makes it a little harder to stomach. If you can get the Burns deal done, it makes it way easier to just feel confident in moving off some of these young pitchers because you know what you have at the top of your rotation, at least minimum the next 4 years with Webb and Burns being under contract. And, beyond that, you should be able to fill out your rotation by then. And I would actually say even the next 2 years, because Robbie Ray is under contract for 2 more years. So you'd have 3 spots in your rotation filled with veterans that are probably going to give you 160, 170 plus innings each, maybe closer to 190 to 200 with Webb and Burns if you get those deals done. So I think it makes it really easy for the Giants to stomach trading from their, organizational strength being young pitching. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, if you do enjoy the content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. We are going to have a live video tomorrow. It'll be at, we'll do the live show at probably around 8:30 p.m. That's usually our kind of go-to time slot that we like to roll with. So keep an eye out for us there. And then, other than that, go Giants and give me your thoughts, and we'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye.